Hello everyone, Dr. Weiner here. I just wanted to take a second this evening to talk about Colt Brennan's death, because we've lost someone else today to the opioid epidemic. He died of a fentanyl overdose, apparently 5 or 6 months into a recovery program. And what I was hoping to do this evening is talk a little bit about what we can take away from this tragedy, because this is unfortunately something that didn't just happen to Colt Brennan today. It happened to a lot of other people as well. Many people, dozens. We're getting up to, I think actually at this point, over 100 people die every day from opioid overdoses. And actually that overdose rate has gone up by 30 to 50% over the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is a huge problem now that is not getting any better. And what happened to Colt actually is a very unfortunately common story, where it sounds like after a car crash in 2010, and it sounds like he had a traumatic brain injury. And then he also developed a substance use disorder at that time. And this is something that we see pretty commonly. Someone goes through a traumatic event, maybe they're even prescribed opioids at that time, and then it just grows, because the opioids not only numb the pain, but they can also numb some of the emotional trauma that goes with that event as well. And what happens when you start to get hooked on these things is that it grows, and you need more and more, and eventually physicians might stop prescribing them to you. And for Colt, I don't know what he'd gone through, if he got connected to medication assisted treatment or not. But ultimately, if you want to get more at that point, you have to go to the street. And once you get to the street, there are a lot of strong options available, like fentanyl, but sometimes it can even be laced in heroin, and you don't know that you're taking fentanyl. And fentanyl, of course, is up to 1,000 times stronger than heroin. And so it's very, very easy to overdose on that. And so what I wanted to take a second to highlight tonight are some things that we can take away, some things that we can learn, because I think that we have to learn. We have to make it so that these tragedies stop happening. And right now, society is moving in the wrong direction. So the first thing that I really want to highlight is that if you or anyone you know needs help, the first call I would make is to the national hotline from SAMHSA. This is a government organization, a national hotline. It's 1-800-662-HELP. 4357. That's 1-800-662-HELP, 4357. Call that number and they'll help hook you into resources that are actually reputable, that are high quality. They can get you to the help or help someone else you know. There's a lot of pitfalls in the addiction recovery industry, a lot of potentially bad actors. So you want to make sure you go through a channel that you trust. So that would be my first recommendation. The second is if you or anyone you know is using illicit opioids in particular, so this would be heroin, fentanyl, anything you're buying off the street, get fentanyl test strips. A lot of health departments have these. Essentially what they are, you take whatever drug you have and you mix it with some water, you dip the strip into it, and if it turns up positive, that means there's fentanyl in there. And a lot of the overdose deaths right now are coming from this fentanyl contamination. We're in what's called the third wave of the opioid epidemic, where in the first wave we had a lot of people dying from prescription overdoses. Second phase had a lot to do with heroin overdoses, and now a lot of it's being driven by fentanyl. So what we know is that if you have these test strips, and people tend to use them, and then they alter their behavior. They don't use batches that have been contaminated. So please make sure that those are in the hands of the people who need them, because we don't need any more accidental overdose deaths. And the last thing that I'd recommend today is talk about problems, and don't make the issues of addiction be so stigmatized that we can't have conversations. Right now, people are less likely to talk about addiction than any other type of behavioral health problem, depression, anxiety, anything. And one of the tragedies here is that you can treat addiction. I'm an addiction specialist, clinical psychologist. This is what I do. I treat addiction. And it's very possible to recover. The more it grows, the harder it can be to get out from under it. And you do not actually have to to hit rock bottom. Sometimes a misnomer. You have to have motivation, sufficient motivation, but it does not have to get to the point where you're risking your life or where you're knowingly taking fentanyl or you're doing things that can have permanent consequences. Doesn't have to get there. Part of how it grows is that it grows in secret. So talk about it. I encourage you to talk to your healthcare provider about it. Talk to your doctor. Talk to your family. Reach out and get help, because you do not have to wait for it to be potentially lethal in order to make a change. So my heart goes out to Colt Brennan's family, to anybody who's suffering from opioid addiction, and to the families of everybody who died today from an opioid overdose. Please, everybody, take responsibility for helping lift everyone up. Lift up society on this issue. Talk to the people in your life who this applies to. Talk to your lawmakers. Be knowledgeable about what's going on at the state level and federally on this issue. And let's make some change. We don't need any more death.